Hello, everyone. It's Shane Conto, your Wasteland Reviewer. Welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and we're making it to the late 20s on my journey through John Ford and starting into some legit feature films. And we're going to be talking about Four Sons for this episode, and the we in this is my buddy Foster, who is a frequent collaborator here on all of my shows and also SiftPop contributor. But Foster, thank you so much for coming on.
Hello, thank you for having me again, as always.
And Foster has a new podcast too that I've been listening to with my buddies Rowan and Heath, so who I've all got to see in the same week. So, Foster, want to shamelessly plug a little bit for your new podcast?
Sure. So this is really Heath's idea too, and he messaged me and he was like, "I have an idea, horror movie podcast." And I basically said, "You know me, I'll just talk forever." And it was just an easy sign on, and then we roped Rowan into it as well. But basically, it's called Franchise Paradiso. Really the first season is just going to be horror movies, and then each new season will be a new genre, and then every episode we pick a topic. So for horror movies it might be like best final girl or best killer slash villain, and then we try and collectively come up with a top 10 list. So that's the idea. It's pretty fun, a lot of spirited debate, a lot of
Mhm.
wacky takes from my co-hosts that I disagree with, but that's okay.
And it's tough too because I've listened to the first two episodes, and when you're trying to whittle it
Yeah,
down to a top 10 list and have very different tastes, that's
yeah,
not always easy. And I did really the score one. Well, I know how much you love scores. I love scores.
yeah,
Well, actually, everybody loves scores
yeah,
because he like studied music and stuff like that. So it's
yeah,
like it's it was an interesting conversation having Mike on there too. Mike Hilty, also very frequent collaborator with everything that I do. Just like, look at all these people that I spend so much time with, all talking about movies.
yeah.
So it's a fun time for me. I've enjoyed it. So shameless plugs all around. But for Welcome to the Wasteland, if you haven't tuned into this show before, we have three segments. We start with our coming attractions for this week of September 15th. Then we'll get into our featured film, Four Sons, and have some recommendations for you. But looking at this particular weekend, September is always an odd month in terms of like there's probably some random sequels that come out, maybe some smaller films that might not be able to compete in the summer or in the rest of the fall. But this weekend we have a small comedy, Camp Hideout. We have a new Kenneth Branagh Agatha Christie adaptation, A Haunting in Venice. We have a lovely little animated film about Leonardo da Vinci called The Inventor, and a whole bunch of other stuff all across Shudder, Netflix, Prime Video. It's a busy weekend. But Foster, what are you most excited about for this weekend?
I am most looking forward to, I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, El Conde, something like that. It's a Pablo Larraín movie. So I've
Mhm.
only seen his English language movies. Jackie and Spencer are the only ones I've seen. Um, I loved both of those quite
Yeah.
a bit. So this would be my first. I think this is Spanish language, I assume, right? Uh,
Yes.
and this premise is kind of wild. I'm not even sure I'm gonna like pick up on everything when I watch this movie, just because it seems like there's a lot of history at play here. But Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet is a 250-year-old vampire seeking death. So that's a premise if I've ever heard one. I'm just guessing it's going to be beautifully shot like all his other movies, and yeah, I really don't know what to expect, but I think it's coming on Netflix, which means I'm almost certainly going to be able to watch it pretty soon.
Yes, because it came out technically in theaters or theater last weekend. Because
Ah,
when Netflix says in theaters, they just mean their theater in New York City that they could dump it and then
oh,
actually for it to
yeah.
count. But it is coming on to Netflix on the 15th, and I did get to see this. It's wild, it's interesting, and it's gorgeous. It's all black and white.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting and strange in the ways that they mix like power struggle, like there's succession elements of like who's going to fill this power vacuum. It has vampiric elements and people who want to be vampires and trying to get close to this powerful vampire. So it has like What We Do in the Shadows vibes, and it's just mixing this all together in such a strange film. So I really look forward to hearing your thoughts about it when you get the chance to watch it. The film that I'm most excited about is Cassandro because a couple of reasons. One, I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. So if there's a pro wrestling movie, it's definitely going to get my attention. But what's even more interesting, this is based off of Sol Armendariz, a gay amateur wrestler who creates this exotico character of Cassandro. And Gail Garcia Bernal is starring in this, who is such a fantastic actor. And I'm ready for some crazy flamboyant lucha libre wrestling movie. So bring it on, Amazon. So this is coming out in theaters the 15th and then is going to be coming out on Prime Video on the 22nd. So if it's around any theaters for anybody, I'd encourage you to check it out or just wait another week and then it'll be on Amazon. So a lot of streaming films coming out this particular week and coming weeks. Like, I'm pretty sure I reached out to Netflix about 6 different movies over the next month because like they're pushing out some content coming up. Prime has a few films as well that they've been really pushing. Shudder always sprinkles in some new horror films and stuff like that. So it'll be an interesting weekend. And I'm also pretty excited for Dumb Money that's coming
Yeah.
out in limited theaters on the 15th and expanding wide on the 29th. I heard really good things about it so
Yeah.
far.
And this
So,
is Craig Gillespie, I think.
yeah.
Who I really like him. I feel like every single one of his movies is the same thing where you watch the trailer and you're like, this isn't going to be that great, and then they're always better than you think they should be.
Mhm.
Like I've never doubted this movie for a second, even though it didn't look amazing to me. I've just like I trust him.
Oh, ever since I, Tonya, he's had my
Mhm.
attention. Loved I, Tonya. And
Ever since Lars and the Real Girl, he's had mine. That's a great movie.
oh, I didn't realize that he directed that.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and Cruella is another one that it's like
Yeah.
that shouldn't have been good, but it was great. I loved it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with Corella. It's definitely one of the best. Like, I feel like, well, obviously, a lot of people have a lot of strong feelings about these live action Disney
Yeah,
remakes, and Cruella is it's more maleficent than most in terms of like it's giving you this revisionist perspective on these characters, and I feel like there's a lot more room to grow with that than just rehashing the same movie over again.
yeah,
So, and I liked what he did with it.
yeah.
So, a lot of options coming out the rest of September, to be honest. There's like
Mhm.
5 wide releases on the 29th coming out, one expansion, which is Dumb Money, but then 4 other wide releases coming out. It's nuts. It's going to be a lot of films to be checking out the rest of September. And
Mhm.
then there's going to be a void in October because nobody wants to compete against Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Uh, so interesting times. But well, it'll be interesting when we have to go to the movie theater and then it's just like nonstop floods of T Swift fans filling out movie theaters in October. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, you just hear it in the auditorium next to you as you're watching like The Killer or whatever.
Just trying to watch my 3.5 hour Martin Scorsese movie
Mhm.
and just like what's going on over there? And you just hear whatever Taylor Swift song's playing, which I don't really listen to Taylor Swift. I could probably like recognize a couple of songs, one of which mostly because of memes. That whole thing with like Brock Lesnar screaming or a goat screaming or like a towel dispenser going, yep. It's really sad. That's the only really song that I will probably recognize from Taylor Swift. So thanks, Internet. But enough about that. We're here to talk about some John Ford. And to give a little bit of backstory here on his 1928 film Four Sons, which is a feature length film at an hour and 40 minutes, this is based on Grandmother Bernie Learns Her Letters, which it's really sad to think about what those letters mean. Specifically, one interesting bit of trivia, there is a young John Wayne in this movie as an uncredited soldier somewhere.
I didn't
Somewhere.
know this.
And I didn't notice either. There's so many moments where it could have been like a soldier just slipped in there and
Yeah.
it's John Wayne. This actually had movie tone music and sound effects tracks when it was released in theater. So it's not a talkie, but it did have sound. So like it had sound effects and music playing in the theater while audiences could watch it. This is one of the very few feature-length films up to this point in his career that actually stayed fully intact. So this was a pretty exciting film to be checking out. The Academy Film Archive preserved this in 1999. And this story focuses on a German family who is torn because one of their sons winds up going to America. And then when World War One starts kicking up, they're on opposite sides of the war. And so this story kind of centers on that. But Foster, what are your general thoughts on Four Sons?
I thought this was great and really, really depressing for like 90% of it. It was brutal and grueling. I thought the mother was
Mhm.
fantastic. I think that was like one of the better silent performances I've ever seen, honestly. Um, I mean, I really connected with that character. I mean, she kind of just can be a stand-in for like anybody's mom,
Mhm.
which is why it
Yeah.
works so well. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really well shot too. There's a couple sequences, like one like right in the middle that was just whoa, kind of takes you out with how good it is. Um, yeah, I thought it was great. No complaints really. What did you think of it? I
Yeah.
think you're probably in a similar boat.
Yeah, Margaret Mann was fantastic. She's the actress who plays the Mother Bernie in the film. And like this film got my attention from the first shot of the movie because it opens with a long tracking shot following the postman in town, walking through
Hmm.
town. And
Yeah.
one, it's a beautiful shot. Two, it's setting up this town and like this really feels like a town.
Yeah.
And that's important because this town means a lot to this film. And you have, because I do my cinematic wasteland show, and I'm going through the history of cinema. I just did my 1908 episode, and there's something about like this film really branching out into like real settings and stuff like that, and this town feels real. Then they do some great work with cameras on trains, like the train
Yeah.
mount. There's this
Yeah.
amazing shot of this train pulling into station and moving by tons of bystanders and bands and soldiers and all kinds of stuff like that. It's such a engrossing shot and really makes you feel the setting. But there's one war sequence in this film that
Yeah.
was incredible.
With the smoke and the fog.
Oh my God. The fog work, the like very tactile setting and like set design. You had like the makeup, and there's a lot of intense close-ups. Like they are like John Ford intense close-ups of like all these soldiers interacting and everything. From a technical standpoint, this is by far his most impressive film up to this point. Like this was really impressive. And then there's just a lot of emotion here because this is such a sad story. Like Mother Bernie gets some of those letters, and they're not good letters. They're letters telling you your kids aren't coming back. And where you think this film, it's like, oh my God, the war's finally over. And then you get into the third act of this film, and she just wants to visit her son. And they put her through this whole entire ringer
I
of her
know.
trying to get into New York City. And it's just like with immigration and everything. And it had such a cathartic ending by the time it finally got there because they built up so many roadblocks for this woman and this family. And damn you, John Ford, hit me in the
Hmm.
feels. But I guess, Foster, what were some of the other things that stood out to you about the film?
Yeah, you're right about the town as a character sort of thing. I'm a big fan of the man with the big belly, like 2 minutes in, who just plops his belly on top of the table while they're playing chess. He's
I
a
put
hero.
fat people are funny, haha, and and even better, big mustaches, bigger men.
Doesn't that I know that mailman doesn't or postman postman, whatever. Doesn't he call him like a fat pig and a billy goat?
Yeah,
Like he is
yeah.
throwing out
That
those insults.
well, because they steal the letter and they're like,
I
"We
know,
want to
yeah.
give it to her," and then he's just like, "You're a fat pig. You're a billy goat." He turns to the old man with the giant
I know.
beard.
It's like he's not so trim himself too to be like insulting everybody else.
It's like, come on, man, you're the second largest man in this town.
Yeah.
Like the one guy is quite large, and but but that's the thing. Like their mustaches. Like at one point, the postman just going
I know he just like fiddles with it.
like I sit here going like this a lot, and he's just like straight pulling on that giant mustache that he has. So like
Yeah.
I even put like the costumes
Hmm.
and the makeup and the hairstyling and everything. It's really distinct. There's so
Yeah.
much personality to this film. Even like the antagonistic colonel with like the scar and the
Yeah.
monocle and everything. It's just like this guy looks bad. And he
Yeah.
is. And he gets his comeuppance and it's amazing.
Yeah. They do a couple like image overlays at a couple
Mm.
points where it just reminds you of the slap, or it reminds you like when the mom is sitting at the dinner table and the four sons just kind of appear like as an
Yeah.
overlay. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know, has he done that in any of the other ones you've been watching?
It's interesting, like not a ton, honestly, not a ton of that, but it's very interesting because like that's been one of the pretty big early bits of special effects is being,
Yeah.
being able to project in footage over footage to be able to accomplish a lot of those things. But no, like that was interesting because you don't see a whole lot of that in his earlier films. So it's interesting to see that he's always trying to branch out and trying new things in terms of
Yeah.
filmmaking.
Yeah. For me, the best scene of the movie is when she gets the first letter because it opens with this like not silhouette, it's like a shadow of the postman that's projected on the wall behind him, and immediately like the tone of the scene changes and you're like something's about to happen here, and then you see him like walking up and then by the time he gets to the mom you already know what it's going to be. I didn't know it was going to be both sons though, like two of the four sons.
Yeah.
I thought it was probably just one of them, so it was pretty brutal because then the third son, the sheep herding one, tells her and reads the letter, and it was like intense because she's so nice and she's so frail and you just kind of want to give her a hug. But then she goes into the bedroom, and that shot with the light pouring in the window with the bed on the left side and she's on the right side is
Mhm.
like I think the best shot of the movie. I thought it was great. It looked like a painting.
Absolutely. And this film, like, obviously, it draws a lot of feelings of like Saving Private Ryan. It's that
Yeah.
idea of like this, how much of a toll can one family go through in
Hmm.
this? And this film is able to balance a lot of threads. Like one of the most cathartic moments for me watching this was when the one son living in America comes home and gets to like see his son, and like that whole, like seeing their child, that whole moment of like meeting your dad for the first time for real, who's like could actually like know who their father is, and his buddy who comes home and is just like eating everything. There's a
Yes.
nice balance of humor in this and real emotion in this. And Foster, what did you watch one of the free versions on YouTube?
No, I rented it. I didn't even
Okay,
know that there
I
was a
also
free one on
rented it.
YouTube. How did you do it?
I rented it too
Yeah.
because like
Okay.
I looked at it and I
Yep.
saw the free one and I'm like, that doesn't look great. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna spend the $4 to watch this.
Yeah.
And it was worth it. And especially because from what I understand, like they're using the actual score and everything for the film, and it works. That scene with the first letter, like the way that the whole tone of the music changes and everything, really captures the emotion of the film. And, you know, there's some impressive shots in this film with a lot of actors in it. Like there's that one scene of like right outside their home with like everybody dancing outside and stuff like that. And like
Yeah.
that's a lot of people to be handling, especially at like this point, because like obviously there are films that have had big casts and stuff like that, but it's still really impressive to see like silent films being able to handle stuff like that. And in some of like the first couple of John Ford films I saw, like there's moments where it's like that's a lot of people and horses film that was made in like the 19 teens,
Yeah.
and being able to handle all that on screen. But yeah, there's just so much technical prowess here. It's an engaging story. There's emotion. We get to connect with these characters. There's good performances. You have like it's progress for his films that like the most problematic thing here is like haha fat people are funny instead of like
Yeah.
developmentally disabled or black people are funny.
Oh no.
So like there's sprinklings of that in his previous films in the 1920s, and it's just like and like it's still not like just because somebody is overweight doesn't mean like you should be
Yeah.
making fun of them and stuff like that. But like honestly, I kind of like those characters. They're
Hmm.
a lot of fun to
They're
be honest.
fun.
And like the postman, like his performance, like he had some heavy moments. Like he knew,
Yeah.
like having to deliver those letters. It's like this isn't good news,
Hmm.
and there's real weight there in his performance. And overall, this is there's a lot, just a lot of things that really work about this film, and it definitely feels like his most modern film up to this point. Because like I feel like even though it's still silent, I feel like this could capture the attention of a lot of like mainstream audiences today because it tells such a great story with a lot of emotion. And you have good people you can get behind and some bad people you really want to hate. Oh, when that colonel comes in and calls her the mother of a traitor.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, I wanted to go through the screen to punch that guy in the face.
Hmm.
But
When Yeah, I liked when she's learning her letters and all the little kids are trying to just help her out, give her some tips. They're being kind of obvious when they're with the way they're like holding the books in front of their face to give her the hints, but it was kind of cute. But then when she goes to Ellis Island and has to say the letters and she can't remember them, I'm like, oh my gosh, this poor woman. And so they keep her there overnight. It's brutal.
yeah, I guess Foster, was anything else stood out to you about the film?
I don't think so. I think that pretty much covers it for me. I just thought it was great.
Mm-hmm. This made me really happy, and like I'm hoping now getting into like this point in his filmography that like going to be like digging into some more like fully fleshed out kinds of films. And like I know I have a group text for a group of my frequent collaborators for this process since I knew this was going to be an undertaking trying to get through 80 John Ford films that I'm sure most people have no idea about. And like I was looking through some of these stories and like they're interesting mixes of westerns and war films, and the one that I'm looking forward to talking with my wife is The Brat, which looks like it's definitely not something I expected John Ford to be directing, but
Hmm.
it looks like a lot of fun. But next week, I'm going to be talking about The Black Watch with my buddy Mike Hilty. So we'll be talking about that for next week's episode. But getting into our last segment for Welcome to the Wasteland is recommendation time. So, Foster, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been watching the Universal Monsters movies. I'm making slow but steady progress over these past few weeks. Um, all of them so far have been really fun. Of course, I haven't really gotten into the like deep, crazy sequels
Yeah.
yet. My favorite ones have been Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, especially Bride. I was blown away. The Frankenstein's castle set is
Mm-hmm.
awesome, and just like the lightning and every that the it's alive. Like that scene plays like exactly as I bet it played in the 30s. It was really cool. Boris Karloff is amazing, especially in Bride, because he gets to like talk a little bit and you see him like kind of
Mm-hmm.
develop feelings. It was surprisingly deep too. And Bride, what I like about that one is it kind of leans into the humor a little bit. It's like kind of there's a little like a little wink, the I can't remember the guy's name, but there's like a mad scientist type character in Bride that is just like he's like
Oh
on
my
another level from
goodness.
yeah,
And
like exactly from
and
like everybody else. He's on another level. It was so fun.
hmm That's what I think. That's when they started throwing in that like little shrill actress that started becoming a consistent
Oh,
um
okay.
comic relief character actress in all of them, because she's in the Invisible Man too.
Got it.
And like throwing her in there, and then like the bride, the whole and like it's such an interesting film, and it's such a weird scene, but that whole thing with the miniature people, that's like amazing filmmaking
Yes.
to be able to make all that work. And I've seen seeds of that doing my Cinematic Wasteland podcast, of like seeing films that were doing like having little tiny people projected in with a bigger shot and everything, but like that's so
Hmm.
elaborate
Yeah.
and so impressive. And if you when you're sitting and watching Frankenstein, you just realize like so much of it is just so iconic that like you,
Yeah.
even if you didn't watch the film before, you've watched the film before, because
Hmm.
like you know these beats, and they feel so natural in just your consciousness. And like James Whale did such an amazing job of making those films. And yeah, Boris Karloff, uh him and Bela Lugosi were such big icons and did so much for early cinema like that, especially in horror, and really iconic performances. So I definitely recommend. I have the two Universal as their right in arm's length. I have these two collections.
Wow.
So they're a lot of fun, and like they're really manageable run times too, because they're like
Yes, I know.
70 minutes, 75 minutes, just plop them in, have a good time.
Exactly.
But so I second that. I would definitely recommend them. This one in particular has like Dracula, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and then like Creature of the Black Lagoon just thrown in as the fourth one.
Yeah, I got like one of the ones with 30 movies in it, so it's going to be an undertaking.
Oh,
Uh,
very nice.
I'm pretty
I
excited though.
I can tell they didn't want to put the Wolfman as the fourth one here, because then why would you buy the other one?
Hmm.
So I think they wanted to split up some of the bigger name ones. It's all
Yeah.
about marketing, and sales.
Yeah.
But so I always like to do three recommendations. First is a new film, which is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe.
Mhm.
This, I did not expect this movie to be as raw and heavy as it turned out to be in many ways. It did not pull punches with a lot of deeply emotional and impactful things, and struggle of violence and anger in the character Aristotle. It was really well performed by the two young actors. I was totally invested in waiting for this friendship to really show its true colors of like they're not just friends. And really trying to build up that. And there's some good, strong supporting performances from Eugenio Derbez and Eva Longoria, and some of the not as famous names, but also like basically the parents in that all give strong supporting performances. But it's the two young actors that really anchor this film and deliver. This is a really emotional and impactful film for me watching. So I hope more people go check it out. I don't think it's getting as much attention as like obviously The Nun 2 and My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 that came out this weekend. But if you get a chance to check it out, please do. My second one, which was from my watch list, is Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch. I am a huge Western fan, and this is like the anti-Western of like this is so anti-establishment and anti like traditional Western, because it is violent. Like if you've watched any Sam Peckinpah film, you'll probably realize like there is an aggression there that you don't see. Like he made the film Straw Dogs, which makes a lot of sense. Here, and the big shootout at the end of this film is one of the craziest, most violent things I've seen put in a film. And this is from the 60s. So like it's really shocking. Like it's like modern 2000s level of violence in a film that came out in the 1960s. It definitely feels right there with Bonnie and Clyde in terms of like making audiences feel uncomfortable and the reality of violence. Because the thing is, like, you watch all these John Ford movies, and it's like, riding off like a hero, like boom, 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 boom. And then you see this, it's like, no, this is what that's really like. And blood everywhere, bullets, bodies dropping. And I love William Holden, Ernest Borgnine, and just Ben Johnson and just the cast of this. Like it's an aging William Holden. So it's like getting into that territory where like he's in the tail end of his career. But definitely would recommend, unless you're weak stomached and don't like a lot of violence, because then this is not for you. And then rewatch, because I'm going to be talking about this with Mike Hilty for my Wasteland Collides episode for the creator coming out. We're talking about Blade Runner and rewatching Blade Runner and just realizing how amazingly beautiful. And because like, and to reiterate, I've only seen the final cut, so I've never actually seen the theatrical cut of this movie. So rewatching, recommending the final cut of the film. And I know the big discourse in the past couple of years is like how amazing Blade Runner 2049 is. I do actually like Blade Runner 2049 more, but I don't want people to like miss the fact that like Blade Runner is a great movie. And Ridley Scott made a fantastic film that's really thought provoking about artificial intelligence and where does life begin and end. And it's such like Rucker Hauer was so amazing in
He's
this.
so good.
So good. And Harrison Ford being a very different kind of character than what you see him as Indiana Jones or Han Solo. He is a cold, vulnerable man. And like he gets beat up more than Indiana Jones does in this film. And like it's when it really comes down to what this really about. And Vangelis' score is just chef's kiss. And just the visuals are incredible. This like this acid noir kind of futuristic 2019 LA. So that's always fun. Just like, I don't think LA's like quite like that. And we're 4 years in. But it was such an amazing, like futuristic look at things. But so yeah, if you haven't watched Blade Runner at this point, I'd be interested in checking out the original cut of the film. I know it has a lot of voiceover, like very noirish kind of like voiceover from Harrison Ford and stuff like that. But it's a great film. So highly recommend.
Yeah, the biggest thing I hear is just the ending. Like they kind of spell things out for you a little more, and the final cut is more ambiguous.
Driving off.
Yeah.
But yeah, the ending of the final cut it's such a great just like hit you kind of ending and then go off into like the score playing into the credits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that's a wrap here on this week's Welcome to the Wasteland. Foster, thank you so much for coming on and chatting movies.
Thank you again. It is fun as always.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.